Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Matt Boudreau, and as you can see, I'm joined by my friends Andrew Scheps and Kevin Churko, couple of very talented and very experienced individuals. We are going to talk about the effects of COVID on the music industry and the recording industry in general. And we'll take some questions. Definitely, I'm checking out YouTube here on my iPad. That's why I keep looking down. And to talk to you guys, I've got to look up there. So. And Loic, if you need me to do anything, I'm checking out Slack there, so you can just send me messages like talk faster, talk slower. So, how you guys doing?
Good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Feeling good.
you ready to talk about this nutty topic?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, it's all
Why
we've done
not?
for the last 8 months, so
Well, let me throw this out to you. These are some stats that I got from the uh the World Economic Forum says the global music industry is worth over 50 billion with two major income streams. One, live music, which makes up over 50% of total revenues, and then recorded music, which includes streaming, downloads, physical sales, and sync revenue in games, music, and TV. So
Oof.
this
That's
this
a lot.
article that I read is 6 months old at this point, which is about the time. Actually, I think we've been in this lockdown longer than that. It feels like a century. So things have changed for a lot of people, and it's obvious that live music of all of these things has taken the biggest brunt of it. But when live music takes a big hit, everything down the line takes a big hit. So I think my first question to you guys is what have you noticed in your own worlds with your own clients? Any changes, anything out of the norm that has affected your workflow, your income streams, the amount of work that you have. Andrew, you want to start?
sure. It's slow. I mean, that's it's slow. Major labels rely on touring and promo to support any release that they do. So no major label was scheduling releases for the first 4 or 5 months, and then I think they realized it was gonna go on so long that they had to start doing something. So now releases seem to be getting scheduled, but studios also obviously closed from the first day of the lockdown, different countries at different times. There are absolutely no in-person large band recordings until, as far as I know, maybe 6 weeks ago. Studios started opening up. There started to be guidelines in different countries. I know the UK is open, but I mean, it takes a huge amount of investment to be open. You have to have upgraded your air conditioning systems. You have to have dead days on either sides of sessions. The producer cannot go in the live room and the artist cannot come in the control room. I mean, everything about it is obviously very, very different. Now,
Wow.
I mix mostly. So for me personally, work has just been slow. There's less stuff to mix because there's less stuff being tracked. I'm getting more interesting indie stuff though, because I think a lot of people got super creative at home. Um, but the studio that I was a partner in down in Wales, where all my gear was, that closed. Not a direct result of COVID, but that was definitely the last nail in the coffin. That's gone forever. I mean, they're open as sort of like a dry hire thing with no gear in, but as a commercial studio, that's gone. And that was a studio that was doing well. So it isn't just. I think that the financial crash in 2007 saw a weeding out, and I think that combined with the online digital streaming saw supply meet demand. So instead of the record business just printing money because they could, all of a sudden you really kind of shrank the business down to maybe what it could actually support, whereas this is just devastating things that probably would normally be doing okay.
Kevin, what have you seen on your side of it?
Well, Andrew's in the UK, I'm in the US, and it's been a little bit different here. So I'm in Vegas, and it's very much largely in America. It's a state by state problem, right? So I can't necessarily tell you exactly what's happening in LA because I know a lot of the studios closed. I think in Vegas, so there's two parts of my business. I'm a producer engineer, but then I also own a recording complex too. And so we have like a fairly large building with like 4 studio rooms. Well, actually a couple edit rooms on top of that. So say 6 studios that before COVID I'd say we're maybe, maybe we're running at 60%, normally, and which two of those rooms, myself, I'm working in one, my son's working in another one. So on any given day, we're taking up two of those four rooms. Um, but we were one of the only studios in town that really closed. We took COVID pretty seriously from the word go. And so when the governor said, you guys got to shut down, we shut down. And in Vegas, there's not a lot of large studios like mine. There's the studio at the Palms, which has two big rooms, and then there's us. But there's a lot of smaller studios that didn't really change anything for them. They still had their regular clients. They still had the regular stuff going on. But for us, who existed from maybe a little bit higher profile of a client, it was pretty tough. So we literally closed for, I would say, a couple of months, almost technically for a couple of months, other than I would go in there because it's my place, so I can go in there and work, and I'm alone and I'm with my family and that sort of thing. And I'm not primarily a mixer like Andrew is, but a lot of times I'm working on my own in any case. So it enabled me I actually loved it. I mean, for the first time, I could skip down the hallway, sing the songs I wanted to sing, and go, I got my place back, because on any other given day, there's a ton of people walking by in different sessions and people I don't know. So we closed down, but then very quickly after that, the studio at the Palms didn't open up. And then when the governor allowed us to kind of open again, it was a different world in the sense that I had to hire more people. So I had to hire because people in the US seem to have a hard time taking it seriously and wearing a mask in public places. I literally had to hire what I call a hall monitor in order to make sure in the public areas, the kitchens, the restrooms, all the common areas, the lounges, that people were still wearing masks because they kind of decided they didn't want to. So that brought my overhead up as far as the studio goes. But honestly, people started coming back pretty fast and pretty quick. And even right now, today, like I'm at home right now because my daughter, who manages me in the studio, both, she, some client phoned at the last second, needed a favor to get into my room, and he's in there now working, and I'm at home. So we've gone from, let's say, like the studio itself, pre-COVID, 60%, say. Now there's a waiting list every week, to get in. So it's actually, good and bad. Good that they're coming, bad that a lot of people still aren't practicing as safe practices as they could. Unlike Andrew's situation, we didn't have to, like, we had masks in the common areas, but in your studio itself, you were allowed to take your mask off. And of course, singers have to take their mask off, but we were, definitely sterilizing the pop screens and those kind of things. All my engineers were doing that sort of thing. So, there's a whole different level of attention that had to be put on everything. But once you're in your studio room, it was kind of like business as usual. And I was lucky because I worked with actually quite a very few amount of clients and people I've known over years. In some cases, like the guy I'm working with right now, I've worked with him for 12 years. So we know each other very well. I know he takes it seriously. He's not a social butterfly, so I feel comfortable working with him. But having said that, and having told you how busy it was and how popular the recording process still was, my next week is now blown out because my son Kane and I were supposed to be riding with another guy for a week, and he called me literally last night and said his daughter has COVID, and he's from one of the states that was really affected, and his daughter has COVID, and he doesn't feel comfortable. And I said, I don't feel comfortable, so I'm glad that you don't feel comfortable coming, and thank you for calling me and telling me. So now my week is gone. I mean, probably like Andrew probably has a list of things he can do. When something like this happens, I do as well. And so I just go to the waiting list and to the guys, waiting in the wings. Or in my case, a lot of times I can write without people. So on one sense, COVID's actually been kind of good for me because it's kind of given me a little bit of a mental break, because before that it was going pretty hard for a lot of years. And now I've kind of had a chance, now I'm over it. Now I'm ready to start working again, hard again. But I've had a chance to kind of relax a little bit, not go in, do 12-hour days constantly. And other than that, it seems like the industry in Vegas is continuing on, other than a lot of the residency people like Carlos Santana and that type of artists that used to rent the place. aren't in town now, or if they are in town, they aren't coming to record. So it's a different kind of client coming now too.
I had a session a few weeks ago. It was my first in months, and everybody in the band had I learned after the fact that everybody got tested prior to doing that session because they were all significantly older, some with, different states of health, some more extreme than others. And it was amazing how cathartic it was for everybody to actually be, doing that, first of all, getting out of our houses, etcetera. So, one
Yeah,
thing that in analyzing all this I've thought about is that it's amazing how certain areas have flourished, certain aspects of the musical recording economy have flourished, like sales of guitars have gone up. Um, Online lessons seem to have increased as well. Recording economy have flourished, like sales of guitars have gone up. I'm getting a repeat online back lessons into our ears. Do you guys hear that?
that's amazing. You're awesome. I think we're caught up.
Are we
Yeah.
caught
My
up?
bad.
Yeah. Thanks, Loic.
Well, I
Anyways, yeah.
think that I mean, I mentioned the financial crash earlier, and I think that's actually it's the exact same thing that happened then, where every single business in every city was closing except recording schools and cooking schools because people take the opportunity to pursue the dream second career. And I think people locked up at home and finally said, okay, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. I'm going to do this. So you will definitely get an explosion in the people coming into it for the first time or the people trying to level up. And I think that's great. But that's not sales of guitars to people who are already making records, I would guarantee.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
But I'd have to say that it has, like, I've gotten lots of calls from people that can't tour and they can't do the things they normally do. The tours are canceled, and they're, in from a writing point of view, it's pretty good because people, like, that's not my primary business is not writing, but I have some writing pro friends who that's all they do, and they got their Zoom day filled up, and they seem to be busier than they've ever been because all those people that usually tour or are doing PR or doing whatever they do in their lives aren't doing that. They're just sitting at home writing, and eventually they have to record. So my guess is that there's probably a little bit of a time lag, and probably within a month or two, Andrew is going to be going, I can't keep up to all the work because all those projects are going to start coming through. Like I said, like, we've been getting busy the last 2 months, like going from 0 to 100 fast. So I would think that that's a chain of events, and eventually the mixer guys will all of a sudden get all those things all at the same time, and labels will want it all done all at the same time, and all the artists will probably foolishly put them all out at the same time. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and it'll be interesting to see at the end of it, who's won and who's lost, and who's done better and who hasn't done better. And I think for people like Andrew and myself, we're in great positions because we can, I can hibernate for a little while and resurface, and it's not really going to change my life that much. Unlike my musician friends who need to work, who need to get out there and play every night, who need the tour money, who need Monsters endorsement to function in life. I mean, it's brutal for my friends, you know
We just got
and honestly, one of the other things I took an opportunity to do during this downtime is do the things I never would have time for before, because you want to capitalize on things when you can. But I did a wedding song with one of my clients who's a friend. I mean, all my clients are friends. So one of my friends who was getting married, and he texted me one day, can you help me out with a cover? And I go, what cover? He told me, I thought that was the strangest cover of all time. I said, yeah, I can do that. And as it happened, I had another COVID thing where they canceled on me. So I thought, I'm just going to do this thing for fun. And again, I'm in that position where I can do something for fun and soothe my soul. But my guitar playing friend who was playing covers on the strip, before pre-COVID, and all of a sudden has no money coming in, it's brutal for that guy because he just can't have a downtime. He's got to do lessons or, think about whatever else that he's got to do to pay those bills.
And obviously all
And
the
with
touring personnel as well.
exactly, that's even worse. I mean, all the guitar techs and all the road guys. I mean, it's freaking brutal. I feel
yeah.
really bad for all those guys.
What do you think's going to happen to all the front of house and monitor people what's gonna happen to them and where are they gonna go? Are they just gonna open up studios and say, "Forget this live sound thing?"
Well, who knows? I mean, I think they're all trying to ride it out, because unless there's some other career they want to take up, they're filling the gap until they can do what they do. And I
Mhm.
think the problem is the people this is going to affect the most is the people who were already being affected the most. And it's the same in a lot of industries where the middle class of the touring industry, it was already kind of in trouble. And I think there's so many venues that have closed, and there's so many people who are sort of on that tier in terms of the roadies that they're not going to be able to afford to ride it out. So they're going to have other work. Now, whether they decide to leave that work and go back to touring, who knows? Who knows? I don't know, but I know quite a few, and I know some of them have managed to reinvent themselves, and obviously there's a lot of work going on with, ticketed concerts from a distance and alternate venues and that kind of thing, but not enough to make up the difference. So, yeah, there are a lot of people out of work, but, out of work in the same way that people from any industry are out of work.
I got lots of calls just recently. I didn't really think about it until we're talking about it right now, but you know how many live front of house guys and monitor man I have calling me saying they've decided to be a recording engineer or they want to have a go at that. And I'm thinking about it now. Yeah, of course, because they can't get out there and do live sound. So they're
Mhm.
asking me for instructional programs or what do I know? Like where do they go to learn that sort of thing? And it's not that easy, and it's, I mean, but it is easy to go on the internet and just find out every YouTube video that you could find in order to learn how to do things. But even actually this morning I got a text from a drummer, an old drummer friend of mine, who said he's decided to go straight into writing now and just concentrate on that. And I'm thinking now, well, yeah, he's doing that because he can't go out there and play drums. So there's going to be people after my job now too. So it'll be funny the way that it all starts working out, and I think that the smart people or the ambitious people will find different ways of doing things. Um, it's just that if you're a guitar tech, I mean, I don't know how that guy transforms into other things. I mean, he can do anything, but you know what I mean. And it's not like he can all of a sudden write songs if he wasn't writing songs previously.
I wonder how if people are going to retool so that, let's say that once the whole thing blows over, hopefully, what will other people's habits be like? How will they shift their thinking like, well, I got to be ready for the next pandemic, so I'm going to financially plan this way or I'm going to structure my jobs this way. Wonder how that's going to go down.
I think that, the one upside, if you are not just panicking, which a lot of people are just panicking, they're just trying day to day to get enough money to eat and things like that. But if you've managed to keep it a little more steady than that, I think we've all had a lot of time to reassess kind of what we want to do. Like I used to say yes to everything. I'd speak at schools constantly. I would be in person at events like this all the time. I spent a month in New Zealand and Australia last year, which was amazing. But I would say yes to everything, and I spent a lot of time traveling. And it hasn't been a bad thing for me to not do it because it's made me realize how much of it doesn't need to be in person necessarily. And so I think that, I mean, that's just a little mini version, and I'm in a much better position than a lot of people. So I don't want to pretend like this is what everybody can do. But I do think that, like, I'd spent a few years on the road at the beginning of my career, and it's a hard thing to stop doing if you still have the work, if you wanted to get off the road and do something else. Now, I had a very clear vision of I wanted to be in the studio making records, but maybe there are going to be some of those people who had a hard time saying no to a tour because it's known money, who can now say, all right, well, now I really am going to invest and do the other thing that I wanted to do, whether it's related or not. So, there have got to be some positives, I hope. But for the people who want to tour, touring is going to be different too, because the insurance is going to be different, the pay is going to be different, the venues are different. It's all
Yeah,
going to be structured so that a tour can cancel at a moment's notice, and the
yeah.
people who are putting up the money won't lose everything. So I don't know what that's going to be like. And then also, I mean, it goes up to artist management as well. Established managers are just as busy now as they were before the lockdown. Lower tier managers have absolutely nothing to do and they've got no income. So it's every part of the music business. The same
I
as
mean,
every
really,
part of hospitality business, food, everything that involves people coming to somewhere to do something in a group, decimated.
Mm.
It really seems like the mirror of the economy or the world in general, that the upper level doesn't change. They keep making more money during times of COVID, but the people at the bottom maybe never made a lot of money, but the people in the middle, they're the ones that are hardest hit. Again, I have a musician friend who's high level. Andrew knows him, and he's right now he's building houses because that's the work he can get. He's mostly a live guy, and he's building homes. It breaks my heart. But you got a family, you have to work, and as Andrew said, the high level managers are still doing well. They're selling catalogs, they're making deals, but the mid level managers who can't get that mid level band on a tour now, there's barely money coming before, and now there's none. So it's tough.
But at the same time, I always tell people, when in hard economic times, there is no shame in, even if you're a recording professional, a musician on a professional level, there's no shame in going to do other work. If you've got to go work at Trader
No,
Joe's
of
to make
course.
ends meet, go to Trader
I mean,
Joe's.
we've all done that. Uh, Other than for, I just before this call, I got off the phone with one of my guys who's, when you have no money coming in and you didn't really have a lot of money to begin with, and you're an artist, you're not say a backroom guy, or you're not, just the drummer or something. But when you're like the solo artist, it's not cool to necessarily be at Starbucks making coffees when one of your fans comes in. I mean, that does kind of give them a different perspective of that. And I think a lot of these people don't really want to have those public kind of jobs. It's one thing, like when I was younger, I'd build fences, I'd framed houses, all those kind of things to fill in the holes. But I wasn't the main guy, I wasn't the singer, I was a drummer and wanted to be a studio guy more than anything else. So it'll be there's no shame in it at all, but lots of these people, like, have to live up to a certain, maybe they don't have to live up to the expectation, but some of these people that you thought had a lot of money maybe don't, and now they're really in trouble because they still can't get out there and make the little bit of money they can.
Now, Andrew, you look like you're about to say something. Go
Well, I
ahead.
was just going to say it also. It's hard to get the global perspective on it because, of course, there isn't a global perspective because every country is different. But it's worth looking into how different countries are supporting the people in the arts, and not just the
Yeah.
artists, but touring musicians. And there are countries who realize that it's a part of the economy and it's got to be shored up exactly the same way as other sectors of the economy. And then there are countries that just say, whatever, good luck. So it's hard to talk about it in the microcosm that we are, but it's about society, and it's about how we treat people, and it's about what are basic human rights in a modern society. And that's very different. Everybody has lots of different viewpoints, and I'm not going to espouse a viewpoint, or I don't not even going to say what I think about it because it's irrelevant. But that's what we're talking about here: is if somebody has a job, they've been working for 10 years on the road doing backline, do they have a right to be bailed out when extraordinary circumstances has completely shut down their profession? And
And the
everybody's
answer
going to
is yes.
Well,
The answer is yes, definitely.
some
I mean,
people
they
here,
do
I think.
have a right. Sorry to cut you off, but I've had, again, because most of my friends are in the music world, and when I mean, I have a couple different businesses that got what Andrew's talking about, government money. It passed through to my employees. Even during those times we shut down, we paid everybody. We were able to pay everybody, and nobody had to lose their job. Nobody had to worry about it. But the guy that played weekends at the bar, that guy does that money barely filtered down. I had one guy call me, I just got a check for $1,000. What's $1,000 going to do for me? I mean, it didn't really filter down to the gig workers the way that they thought it would. And giving more money to more businesses, bigger businesses, without having a way to direct it directly to the people is a bit of a problem. And I'll be political by saying that, is that people do need that money that companies have gotten. It should have been maybe given more directly to the average person rather than, an NBA team, let's call it.
Yeah, I just interviewed Robert L. Smith, who's an engineer in New York, on my recent podcast, and he made a comment. He said, "You know, it's a shame that people don't think of people in the world of who make movies or make music or write books. Imagine getting through this pandemic without those things. Imagine if we didn't have all of those entertainment-based things." And he said it's a shame that those people are not considered essential workers, with no disrespect to, people on the front lines or, people at grocery stores, et cetera. But, it's kind of a drag that that the different economic levels or the lower economic levels of the industry, music, film, games, otherwise, uh, they're really just like I think any society are paying the price. They're really suffering. And just like, there's the one percenters and the people at the top, and then everybody in the middle class and below is really just not doing so hot.
Well, look, it's the. I mean, this goes back to like eighth grade or whenever you learn this, where you learn the sort of pyramid of what people need. And once you've taken care of basic needs, then you start needing stuff that's one level up. So the eating and shelter thing is
Mhm.
pretty high priority, but it's just I mean, I don't know. I don't know how deep and off topic we really want to go, but it's how civilized a society do we want to pretend that we live in? And
Mhm.
for the last 5,000 years, we've had the arts as a big part of human society. So it's not recent. Touring is way older than the record business. It's just part of how humans live in groups, and it is important. Otherwise, people wouldn't have been drawing on caves. It's a huge part of being a human being, and it's important. I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, let's take it in a different direction now. I mean, we've been, it's a bummer topic, but there are some interesting developments that have come about as a result, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this. I personally have figured out great ways to remote mix with people, do revisions, et cetera, et cetera. So, has any new thing like that changed your way of working?
I've been sitting at home working remotely for a long time, so that part hasn't changed. What changed, I think, and it was just a coincidence, is that I've been very conscious over the last 10, 15 years about diversifying and not trying to just do the record making thing. It's not enough. So obviously plugins and videos and blah blah blah. And some of it is to make money and some of it is just to learn for myself and some of it is to give back. So it's pretty spread out. And I've spent the last 7 or 8 months learning to program basically with SoundFlow to automate Pro Tools and building bolt-on applications for Pro Tools because it's all the stuff that's been bugging the crap out of me for the last 10 years. Now I can make tools that actually fix it. So for me, that's been great. It's been an opportunity that in a normal world, I wouldn't have been home enough. I wouldn't have had the time to dedicate to it. And now it's almost like a second full-time job. So that's been great.
You speak my language there when you talk about diversification. I think that's something that I've been working on for the last several years, for the last 6 years, of trying to develop different income streams that, are of interest and related. Uh, Kevin, with a studio, do you all diversify much?
Well, like Andrew, I've been on that path for a while now, and so outside of music, I have co-ownership of a restaurant, different things like that, and it's more of a fast food kind of place. So actually, that that place did really well during COVID because it was a takeout place, and so people were still able to come, and everybody's got to eat, and it was comfort food, so people were still able to they still wanted their fries and their fried chicken and all that sort of thing. But honestly, that isn't really a big source of income for me at this time. But the other thing, when you talk about diversifying, I mean, like Andrew, I mean, when COVID hit, it kind of let me do a couple things that I didn't set enough time for to do or enough importance on. And so when there was nobody in my studio and I didn't want to sit with any clients and they didn't want to come to me, I started doing my drum library and recorded, every drum I have and some friends' drums from my 4 studios in my building to my cabin to my house. It's like if I want to go to my cabin for 2 weeks, I pack up the drums, and these days you don't need too much gear to record. So I got one of my guys to take all the gear up there, and we set up and we recorded samples. So that library is a work in progress. And although I wasn't as ambitious as Andrew is with the programming side of things, I did enable one of my other engineers to be that programmer guy. And so he's programming all the samples that we've done. He's finding some cool ways in Contact to make a Contact instrument where all the tricks they use when I mix, people can dial those in a different way. I mean, they won't have the real live time, stuff like parallel compression, those kind of things. But the way that we're doing it, we're trying to make it so that people can still somewhat mix it, from one source, from one drum source. So I think again, for a certain type of personality, it is a kind of a backwards blessing. And a manager friend of mine, was programming this application for unfortunately was for TikTok. And with all the governmental Chinese stuff that was going on, he was getting ready to sell it, and then they were shutting it down. So but anyways, the story is that he wouldn't have been doing that if his band was out there on the road and he was having to get out there and do it all. So I think for people like us that, I love being at home. I could be at home every day of my life. I'm not really that social. In fact, I'm not hardly social at all. So to me, it just gives me other things to think about and do. And but by almost by not having a choice. I can't go
Mhm.
to my studio; it's closed. I mean, I went to my studio, but I can't go over there with clients because it's closed. And I wanted to respect that. And even if the clients wanted to come, it's like we didn't know what was going on. We still don't know what's going on. I know in the UK, it's COVID's bad. I know in America, it's highest hospitalizations that we've had yet. So who knows where it's going until there's an actual vaccine. So Andrew may be programming even more, be doing even more
Well, and
stuff.
also someone mentioned in the chat, and I did want to bring it up because it's been great, is, and Matt knows this, I've started doing those interviews on Mondays, that Pure Mix has helped me get out there. And the great part is everybody's been home. I mean, it's just like Monday mid-morning on the West Coast, mid-afternoon on the East Coast, and everybody's like, "Yeah, I can make it," which normally that's not going to happen. So, yeah, there are upsides that we can take advantage of, definitely.
Oh, I can see the
Yeah.
chat. I didn't realize there's a chat there. That's great.
Yeah, it's, if you check out YouTube, it's delayed from what we can see of each other, but there's a whole list of, people contributing, their
Okay.
thoughts. People
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
talked about funds availability for, people who've been on the road. Where did that go? Loic, I don't know if you can see that or put that up. Um, oh yeah, okay. All right, Bobby, get on it. Let's get a link, man. Um, yeah, so habits have changed. Um, some technology has changed the way we work. I think a lot of people are familiar with audio movers for when you're doing mix touch ups. That's one thing. I think where I haven't seen things change uh, I haven't seen any technology that I'm 100% convinced about is remote playing for musicians, how they can collaborate without so much latency and internet gobbledygook. Have you guys seen anything that looked promising?
Well, there are things I've seen for it's more for like mixed review for post guys where they'll stream 4K video and surround sound. But the problem is you actually have to pull a network to your studio because you can't get around the internet if you're on the internet. And that's that. There's just no solution to that. There's going to be latency.
Yeah,
Which
I'm
begs
not
the
sure how that these guys are doing recording by remote. I really haven't ventured into that area yet.
Yeah, and and once again, thinking ahead, what's going to come as the fallout of all this, and I'm hoping that we see more fiber optic networks uh, go all over the world so that if we're all going to be working from home a bunch, because many people, many companies, I'm sure, are realizing, wow, we really don't need to rent some giant commercial facility. We can just have everybody work at home and come in for quick meetings, maybe once a quarter or whatever. Um, I think the backbone of the internet may take a big shift forward. And of course, 5G will play into some of that, I'm sure. So now, as far as, how people can, who are not doing so well, what they can do in the meantime, can you guys think of anything that, up and coming audio professionals should be doing to bide their time? Let's say that they have enough money to survive and they need to, they can improve upon their own skills. If you guys were up and comers, what would you tell people or what would you be doing?
I think everybody has a talent and everybody has a, I think it has to be individualized to the different people. I mean, I've had these conversations for the guys who can write songs. Well, it's kind of not a problem right now. I mean, with all the pain that people are going through and all the drama, you can only write better songs. There should be better written songs this year than other years. When you look at if somebody's a singer, they can be just YouTubing, streaming like crazy. I mean, one of the things that I've loved that I think has changed is maybe the average person's view of an artist. Now you kind of know who the real artists, I shouldn't say real artists, but let's say the organic artists are. You kind of know because they can just pitch up online and sing a song and it sounds great. And I'm going, that was like a recorded video. I mean, that's like, when you look like someone, I mean, this is the upper echelon, but when you look at someone like Nora Jones and you go to her YouTube channel and it's like she's just in a room with a piano and I don't even know what, it's probably just a laptop microphone and you're going, I love that. That was 15 minutes of joy. I'm a bigger fan of hers now because of COVID. I probably might not have even gone back around to her, but if not for COVID. But now I have, and I regularly go to her channel to see what's up. And I think that some of my other artists, she's not my artist, but my other artists, my newer artists have done more streaming and they've gotten more fans and more interaction with people. So that's good for those kind of people. As far as the production world, that's the most difficult area. I have one road dog friend who's building a studio at his place, at his farm. He's got like a farm kind of place, so he goes back to the farm when he's not on tour, and he's building a place. So everybody has ways that they can take advantage of the time, and you have to be creative about it, and you have to wake up and have a good attitude and just figure it out. And chances are, though, is that by overcoming the obstacle and overcoming the um, the brain power you have to use, is you might end up doing something that was way better than you ever thought that you would ever imagine, or way different, or like Andrew said. I mean, I kind of looking at my job a little differently now too. Like maybe I don't have to work Monday to Monday constantly now, and maybe I just want to pick the jobs that I really like. And if all you get, for me, is a better quality of life after COVID, well, that's a great thing. Now, if you're a guitar tech and all of a sudden you build a little demo studio at home, and all of a sudden, during COVID you evolve into that, maybe you're going to like that more than being a guitar tech. Or building guitars, like another guitar tech who's building them and selling them. So, it's hard to have a blanket comment, but everybody has a talent, everybody has a story, everybody has an interest, and if you don't, it's your own fault. The world is still here. There's still, and now it's never been better. Imagine if it was 1918 during that epidemic. You couldn't just go online to discover new things, and you didn't have a computer that you could decide you wanted to program the apps with. I mean, it's still really an unlimited future, and financially, it's very difficult. Hopefully, that will get assisted with shortly. But short of that, it can be a much more exciting time than just sitting at home waiting for COVID to end.
Well
Yeah, I mean,
said.
I think for artists, it definitely presents an opportunity for some of the smaller artists because they're competing on a level playing field. The biggest artists in the world can still only do a live stream.
Hmm.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about engineers and producers, then just, you've got more time to practice. You've got less distractions and you only get better by doing it. So with and also listening to podcasts, like your podcast is amazing. So people should be listening to your podcast, and they should be watching videos on Pure Mix or Mix with the Masters or any other sites that are teaching things and teaching properly, instead of just going down a rabbit hole for the 5 biggest tips for gigantic drums or whatever it is. Like, no, I could spend an hour and a half and watch Jakir King set up microphones to record drums. Like, that might be a good thing to do. So there are a lot of resources that have already been there, but you can focus and you can sort of set yourself up like it's a job, because what the hell else are you going to do?
Yeah.
I wonder what's, studio wise, we've talked about studios closing. W- is that necessarily the case across the board, or do you think Kevin, do you think it's state by state, or Andrew, do you think it's just depends on what's going on in each country?
I mean, here studios had to close. There were no in-person sessions in the UK for months, period.
Mm.
And so the ones that couldn't survive didn't survive. I mean, that's just, there you go. But you could argue, well, maybe there were too many of those studios then, and if they couldn't survive a couple of months, then maybe the business wasn't set up properly. Like, whatever. There are a lot of different ways you can look at it. Um, and how many are going to stay shut? I don't know. I mean, I don't have numbers, so I'd just be making stuff up. But I do know that here they couldn't. And I know that the larger studios had to make significant investments to be able to reopen. Like, to do a string date at Abbey Road, they had to upgrade their air conditioning to, I don't know how much it costs, but it is definitely in the tens of thousands, not in the tens of hundreds.
Wow.
So it's a big deal. The infrastructure to have large scale recording sessions is really expensive at this point.
Well, that's
And
crazy. I didn't realize that they were making companies and studios do that sort of thing. Because in
Well, it's
Nevada
they're
here,
gonna
they're not.
yeah, they're protocols for, like, well, how well does your air conditioning filter the air?
Yeah.
And if you don't meet that, then you've got to upgrade.
Wow. Well, I was surprised to hear all the LA studios that were closed, and I was actually happy to hear that, but also surprised because generally, the music industry is still a little bit, you know, um, sort of survival of the fittest, and independently owned studios, all those sort of things. It's not corporate, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that it's really up to everybody, each individual studio, if they're going to open or close. And here, there was no statewide mandate that you had to close. Well, for a while there was, and we did close. But I think a lot of studios didn't, and I think a lot of studios right now, like us in this state, are doing better than they've ever done. So if you were able to last through that time, and in my case, I owned my building, so I didn't have to rent it. I didn't have to pay someone else money when we were closed. I mean, I had to pay the bank, but um, we were able to weather that long enough until the good times start rolling again. And knock on wood, they seem to be okay now. But at any day we might have to close down again. It really depends how responsible people are. So that's another thing that you know should be said when you talk about Nashville and places like that. I mean, not all these guys are always taking it, as this is my opinion, as seriously as they should. But
do
maybe
you
some of them can't take it seriously because they're in a financial situation that they just can't not go to work.
do you guys know of other audio professionals who are being more flexible with their rates for musicians who may not be doing as well so that they can get work done?
Yeah, I would have to say that I had a couple actually friends from the UK uh, call me and say, and maybe Andrew, well, you're a mixer, so maybe you don't know, but say that the rates in the UK are insanely low right now, and that everybody's doing sessions for cheap, cheaper than they normally would, not higher, cheaper. And they said rather than cheapen that dollar value of themselves, they've decided to try to do other things. I don't. I'd have to say that I have been able to keep on producing during the last bunch of months. So the guys that I've been hitting up, I mean, I'm actually paying them more than what I paid them before because I know how hard the times is. But I control my budget versus a lot of other people. So I think they're all very happy for the work, though. Let me tell you that. And for the guys that pre-COVID got a little Pro Tools rig, got some skills. It doesn't take a lot to be a bass player and record a bass track through. So those kind of guys that were a little bit more flexible and a little bit more well-rounded, let's call it, are now doing better again because I can send that guy a stem and say, "Can you do a bass track on this?" And he can be in Vancouver and he can send it back, and it's great. But if he didn't have a Pro Tools rig at home or some kind of system, Cubase, whatever, then he wouldn't be able to do that. Same thing in Nashville too. I've sent a bunch of tracks there for people to record at home. That's the way you got to do it. I would say that the prices are cheaper than they've ever been, and they were already low before that, is my feeling. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I remember up in Canada paying guys not 20 years ago, not too much less than guys are getting paid now. So it's actually quite sad when you think about the amount of money, prosperity that North America has had, and yet musicians haven't had that at all, other than the top echelon. echelon. So, hope maybe COVID changes that. Maybe it's a shakeout. Maybe that some people just go do other things and they never come back to it. And maybe that by the time it starts picking up full steam, maybe those guys will start making more money because there'll be less players involved. I'm not sure, but I hope it goes well for them.
If anybody on YouTube has any questions, please, before my iPad dies here, because it's at 5%, send some questions in and we'll do our best to answer them. Um, yeah, it's there's definitely some winners and some losers in this COVID time. I hear, like, I mentioned earlier, guitar sales are up. I hear pro audio sales of microphones and little Pro Tools rigs are up too. I think, the
Yeah.
big companies in America like Sweetwater apparently are doing rather well.
Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, everybody who wanted a rig now is getting a rig if they can afford it. Because why not? They're home, so it's time to do it.
There's been some musicians here in the Bay Area that I know who have really shied away from getting recording rigs. Now they're getting them, and now they're
Yeah.
setting up to do remote sessions to make up that loss of touring so they can do bass tracks or guitar tracks or whatever. It's an amazing thing that's occurred in on a number of levels, the positive and the negative. The positive, of course, being that there's more self-sufficiency that's occurring with everybody. They're kind of gearing up their home situations for more interaction musically, recording technology wise as well. So yeah, it's a bummer on a number of levels, but there's a lot of positive, and I think if people are willing to adapt and really kind of think through this, uh, they'll emerge on the other side in a more positive position. I would say. Hmm.
It's just that whole level of just trying to adjust. I mean, we've all gone through different times, not just COVID and not just the housing crisis, but different things. And you either adjust. I mean, one of the best compliments that I ever got from somebody far more talented than myself was I was a survivor, and that's really true. I'm the guy that if my studio got closed down, I'd find a way. I'd sit and program stuff, although I probably wouldn't be exceptionally good at it. And people just got to think like that too. But uh, you know, I have to say that I've really been enjoying, without discounting anybody else's suffering. I've really been enjoying thinking about different parts, like my drum library, and the different parts of my businesses that I'm thinking of. Even with the artists, I mean, I've been able to do projects and songs that I would normally never consider because I was back to back with records. Now that I'm not, it's like, yeah, you want that wedding song? Let's do it. Let's have some fun, and that's turning into a thing. Now it's going to turn into an actual release. Whereas normally, if one of those guys came to me and said, "Let's do this acoustic thing," I'd probably say, "How are we going to sell that?" But it wasn't about that. It was about doing it for fun and doing it out of joy and for a purpose than just thinking about just the dollars and cents. And I think a lot of times the dollars and cents will come if you're true to what you're doing. And if it doesn't matter because you had a good time.
Well, knowing that a lot of musicians take on, even in good times, take on barista jobs, bar jobs, food service type jobs. I think one thing that's changed for me is just that whole level of, I was appreciative of them before, but I think even more so now. Like when I go to grab a coffee to go from someplace, I just tend to tip a little higher. I tend to like, I'm like, you know what? The money will come back to me at some point. I can, push a little more money out the door for tipping people. And when, my wife always goes on Friday mornings to this coffee shop, and we have a coffee machine here, but we go and we try to, give money and buy products from that local mom and pop coffee shop because it's an important business in our world. And behind a lot of those businesses, grocery stores included, there's a lot of musicians out there. And when musicians do well, then I think us recording professionals tend to do well uh, in return. So I always think of, make sure that you pay attention to those other businesses that you might not think are related to the music business.
I mean, really, the economy is about the velocity of money, how fast money travels from one person to the next, from one company to the next. And the quicker that money travels around, the more prosperity everybody has, or at least feels like they have. So that is important. I mean, I've definitely, it's, again, through times of COVID, now we have Instacart where they bring your groceries to you and all that, all the Postmates, Grubhub, all those kind of food services. And I find myself almost tipping as much as I would at a restaurant. And yet all the guy does is bring him in his car. I'm thinking, wow, I got to rearrange my philosophy back when I'm in the restaurant and that guy's busting his ass, bringing me my, third Diet Coke. I mean, these guys, still the faster that the people who can fire around money, the quicker that the economy will recover and continue to do well. So I'm like you, I can't emphasize that enough for those of us that, aren't worried about hand to mouth every week. That's crucially important because that guy that you tip there at the coffee shop, that guy's got to now he can get his tires changed on his car, or now he can go get that tune up, or now he can get something done on his house and go to Home Depot, and then that person there's got a job. So it really is about getting money around as quickly as you can, which again to me is why if the government's going to give any money out, it should go to people directly to inject into the system, which they have in many cases. Um, but that's where the future stimulus has to go.
Andrew, you're a little more rural than I think Kevin and I are. Do you think that's true?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm surrounded by fields, so yeah.
So
That's wonderful.
I mean, that's beautiful, but how does that work?
Yeah.
And like, are there things that you do to try to, help like what we're talking about, or small businesses close by you that you are very fond of?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm keeping a couple of breweries open single-handedly, getting beer delivered. Yeah, not it but the problem is it's tough, like, I mean, there were some people who, like, normally do some stuff for us that we can't happen now because it's, like, inside the house, and I tried to just give them a bunch of money and say, "Look, I'll just prepay you for whenever you can come back," but their rules for taxes, like, you can't get paid for work you haven't done and things like that, so sometimes it's actually difficult, you wanna do it, but it can only be very short term. Um, but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You do as much as you can to support what you can. I mean, look, I'm ridiculously lucky, even not in a pandemic, to have the life that I've got. And so I am very aware of that all the time. And I try and give back as much as I can, whether it's supporting people financially or just teaching or, whatever it is. It's really important. And like we were talking about before, different countries handle it differently on a governmental level, but it'd be good if humans kind of tried to think that way as much as they can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably about 2 months in to the lockdown, I just sent, money to the person that cuts my hair and my two sons' hair, and I just said, "Hey, here's some dough. We would have been in there by now. I hope you're hanging in there." It's I don't know. there's a lot of potential heartbreaking rabbit holes to go down with this discussion. I'm trying to avoid that, but
Yeah,
any part
it doesn't have to be just all about the. I mean, we've already talked, I guess, about the tragedy of it all, but I'd just like to say that I like that Whiskey Myers record that you mixed, Andrew.
Thanks,
Was that
man.
you that mixed that? Yeah, it was you, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm a huge
yeah.
Whiskey. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of theirs. I went to see him in town here, uh, and so I was happy. I actually didn't know that you worked on that until I just double checked what you've been doing as of late, and went to All Music and said, "Oh, you mixed that? That's killer." I mean, I listened to that. That's a great record and a great band. So
he
Nice.
probably mixed
Thanks,
it
man.
on headphones at his local pub.
I don't mix in the pub. I did bring the computer once just to show them because they're like it's also the great thing about being rural, but especially not being in a center of recording is nobody cares what I do. So it's a really great reality check when it's like in LA, like, ooh, what records you working on? What are you doing? But here they find out what I do and like, all right, so you don't work. Like, so well, I do, but you know,
oh, you fool around on the computer then? Is that what you do? You're not even
yeah.
like in a studio, just fool around on the
Yeah,
computer?
yeah, I mean, and these are guys who, they, like, fell trees for a living or sell cars or, a little more direct,
Yeah, that's great. Real
keeps
real
you
men.
honest.
Andrew, somebody's asking if you'll introduce your cats. I think Squid is one of your cats.
Yeah, well, actually, Mole is behind me, but the picture is so bad,
Mole.
but that black blob, that's Mole. Um,
Yeah.
Squid's here somewhere, but I don't know, Squid took off. Yeah, they're around though, and hopefully they're not gonna bring any friends.
You know what's interesting is neither of you, I mean, you guys work on some high profile stuff. Neither of you are in LA.
Well, that is a wonderful side effect of this whole COVID thing too. Let's talk about that because it's not just the tech industry that it's proven to people that you don't have to be there. I mean, Andrew obviously can be anywhere he wants. And actually, I'm even considering some options myself coming up here in the next year. So I love being in Vegas. And I love the city of Vegas. But moving out of LA never hurt me one bit. I met Andrew the first time in LA at a studio
Yeah, I think
there.
right when you
Uh,
guys first came down, right?
yeah, that would have been like 2003 or four or something like that. He was
Yeah,
on one of my first jobs there in town in LA. So it was only maybe 3 years after that I moved to Vegas and wondered if that was the worst mistake I ever made. But as it turned out, it was the best thing I ever did. So again, you're looking at something going, wow, what did I just do? I went from where the music industry is to where it's not. But instead of but I became that Vegas guy instead of another guy. So just like bands too, bands can carve out identities in other places than LA. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now that writers are finding out they don't have to be in one place, or that even I've just noticed just the natural evolution of the internet age, let's call it, even over the last 5 years, where people like myself and Andrew can go live where they want. And if you want to be close to the family, you can do that. And in many cases, like being in Vegas has really helped me because the cost of a client coming here is exceptionally low. I mean, you got all the casino hotels that are way cheaper than LA hotels. They always got something to do. I always have them have something to do so they don't have to be taxing me. It's a great city to record in for that reason, but there's a lot of other great cities to record in too. And I don't think that artists necessarily just want to go to LA or New York or Nashville to record anymore. So I think, and because of COVID, I think it'll get even better. And I think that's really healthy for the industry, not necessarily be centered on three places or four places. I don't exclude the UK at all or London or anything like that, but obviously I'm in North America, so I think of that. But you know, you can mix anywhere. It doesn't matter. I was even thinking about getting like a little Greyhound touring bus and setting up a mix room in the back of it instead of like the bedroom. They always have their kind of master suite at the back. Put in a mix room at the back, and I just go traveling. I can just mix one or two songs each week, pay the gas bill, and that could be life. I mean, you can really do almost anything that you want, and as long as the quality is good, as long as the quality doesn't suffer. And I think that's a wonderful thing for studios. I mean, when I think about even in Vegas, the amount of square footage I have versus what that I can afford to have here versus in LA, it's insane. I could never have the place I have now in LA. And if I wanted to go even further interior, if I wanted to go to, I don't know, Idaho or somewhere, I could probably even have double the square footage there, and or half the overhead. So it's in that sense, technology has really made it an exciting time to live, that you don't have to be chained to that. When I was living in LA, it was an hour minimum, but an hour of travel time if you wanted to live any place decent. The
Yep.
travel time was brutal. Um, you know, I have a much better life here.
Yeah, I wonder, the major music cities like Nashville, speaking in the US, Nashville and New York and LA, I wonder if migration patterns are gonna change and new cities will emerge as the places to live and create music and record, etcetera, after this is all done.
Yeah, don't
Well,
know.
Andrew's
We
living
could
in the
play part
country.
of it. Why not? You know, why not?
Well,
Yeah.
on that note, we are out of time. Loic is, giving me the high sign that we need to conclude. Hey, guys, I really wanna thank you. I appreciate you, jumping on board with me and talking about this. I know that, there's other more fun topics to talk about, but, thank you for
There's
jumping.
nothing more important though. So good on you, Matt, and I'm a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
Well,
Yeah.
thank
It's
you.
always
I
a
appre
pleasure with you, Matt.
All right. Well, Loic, did you wanna jump in and direct us, or should we just jump off the call and call it a day?
I wanted to thank all of you for joining us. Andrew, I know it's late now in England, but
It's
you have
a beer 30.
beer 30. All right, great.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much. Still an early day in Vegas. And Matt, thank you. So, yeah, I wanted to thank all of you for joining us. And I'm going to pass it back to our host of the day, Stefan. And on this, gentlemen, have a lovely, lovely rest of the day or the night.